It is my honor to get to briefly introduce our speakers this morning. When the committee and the chairs of our 50th anniversary started to think about the idea of writing a new Torah, they understood, and I realize, see Julie Gottlieb and David Finkler, the leaders of this team, our 50th anniversary team are in the room, they understood that we couldn't just write the words of a Torah, but we needed to celebrate the Torah of Beth Am, the five of many values that we hold that make Beth Am, Beth Am. So today we have the honor to hear from speakers who are coming forward. I appreciate our second value that we're exploring this year, Amcha, the rich diversity of our community and our people. There's a midrash that explains that when the first human, Adam, was created, he was created with dust from all over the earth. The idea being that from the essence of humanity, we're rooted in diversity. That no person can say, I'm greater than another. And it follows that if humanity is created from a place of diversity, and we're created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God, then it must be that to pray to a God means to pray to this diversity, this combination of all of us. And that means that when we look at God, God looks a little bit like us, but it also looks a little bit like the person sitting next to us, both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. This is a religious project, a religious experience, to pray to a God and to live into a world where diversity is central. And in a time, in a moment, when it seems like our public conversation is about who has a place and who is safe in our world, we need faith communities that do this not always easy, but essential work of Amcha, of celebrating and honoring diversity and building communities in which diversity is at the forefront. Beth Am has always been this. It doesn't come easy. It took generations of leaders, of a congregation that understood that this was the important work of our community. To celebrate Amcha at Beth Am means not tokenizing, not just checking boxes of different kinds of people in the community, but creating real space and leadership for people of different genders and races and sexual orientations and abilities and so on and so forth, and age. And diversity means not only bringing people into the circle, but also listening to them. Believe it or not, when you hear from people that are different than you, sometimes they have different ideas about how things should be. And that means that a community that's rooted in Amcha is always going to be changing, because it's always going to reflect the brightness and the richness of everyone who's in the room. And there's no question that when we hear from our speakers, we'll understand a little bit of what that has meant for this community for the last 50 years, and God willing, what it will mean for the next 50. So I want to introduce our speakers. This morning we are really, really honored to get to hear from Desiree McKinney-Robinson and Philip Robinson. I want to mention again our observing this week the first Yortzeit of Byron. And then we're going to hear from Nick Hill. After that, we're going to hear from Bonnie and Stuart Sainman, who are also observing a Yortzeit next week for their son Benji. And then we'll conclude hearing from Jennifer Donato and then David Finkler.
Shabbat Shalom. I wasn't looking for a spiritual home at the time when I encountered Beth Am on a flyer given to my oldest son, who was newly 14 and looking for his first job, and credits for homeschool. Normally, Philip was the one who explored the new places. But on that Friday night, 23 years ago, it was me. It was my first time at Kabbalat Shabbat in the comfort of a mainstream shul, and my first time meeting the clergy here. What I didn't know is that Philip had already been invited to Beth Am at age 17. Quiet seeds had already been planted before I even knew this place existed, and 3 years before even meeting him. Beth Am found me through Rebecca Yenyawine, Kids on the Hill program. The shul was described as an anchoring support for the community of White Lot. At the time, I thought that was just a phrase, but I was intrigued enough to call. I called and I spoke to Linda that explained the deep connection to the Reservoir Hill community. Looking back, now I know that it was a promise. It's the creed of Bethel. The very next day, my family and I walked through those doors. My youngest children joined the other kids on the beamer for Aunt Callahan on the beamer. We fell in love with Leah. She was so small and yet so powerful. Then our mothers came. It wasn't just attendance, it was arrival. With generations present, Beth Ann embraced my nieces and my nephews, our brothers, my sisters, all at every turn. Harriet Miller, Nancy Bloom, and Debbie Pass of all blessed memories took me under their wings. Those locks upstairs in the rafters came about because of Elliot Staмен's personal tours, adventure tours for the boys. Byron spent high holy days counting the bricks as in the ceiling as we sat at our seat, which I've learned recently is a thing. What else is a young mind to do after seeing the dome from the interior? Philip met Ephraim Potts, of blessed memory. He came with the building, is what he said, and if you know, you know. I remember Philip bringing lighting supplies from his job for the menorah at Ephraim's request. My first Shabbat morning, I brought desserts, something I always did. I always contributed something everywhere we dined. I wandered into the kitchen and met Harriet Miller, and she asked, "Who told you to bring these?" I said, "No one. This is just what I do." We laughed about this just a few months ago in December. My mother and I had spent years creating Shabbat meals and learning kashrut practices prior to coming here. That dessert wasn't just a gesture, it was our way of sharing Shabbat and saying we've come to share and learn.
We arrived on the last Shabbat of the year with little Hebrew and children who could just dive in and a whole lot of heart. It may have been unexpected, but we didn't come just looking for friendship. We came looking for family. That was made clear when we met Rabbi John Conheim. We found both. Jasper Levine, who was nearing 100 at the time, would smile and ask each week, "When, Rabbi, when? I want to be alive to see them fully in." It felt like there was a whole corner of people cheering and pushing us on. We took classes with Rabbi Alter, one of the many rabbis who attended Bethel. Our boys were watching, so we had to go first. We weren't going to have a Hebrew as a secret language for our children in our house, and they feared B'nai Mitzvahs, not just the Torah, but the candy pelting afterwards. So Desiree and I joined the B'nai Mitzvah class before their bar mitzvahs. Desiree was unanimously nominated to do the drash. I must have read through 10 or more drafts before she was satisfied. Each year, I hear the Haftorah Mitzvah read. I find myself chanting along, and with the other ladies standing right beside me.
Bethel has seen many transformations of our family, from the changing of our marital status to when we buried my mother, we were embraced. When we lost my father, we were embraced. When we lost my sisters, that embrace extended to my whole family. Betty Chalmers is now an official cousin. After serving with the other cousins during a repast, and she was preparing for plates for us mourners. And when we lost our oldest son, Byron, BJ, for whom we had honors today, Bethel lifted and carried us. This community has breathed new life into his name with the developing community pantry named in his memory, acting on the words spoken about him during his shiva, about his long-standing mitzvah project that never ended. Beth Am has never been just a building. It has been a living embodiment of Amcha, the soul of the people, wide, deep, expansive, and open to the othered as an intricate part of community. We bore 3 generations when we arrived. Beth Am lovingly folded us all in. There are promises of shared joys to come, new milestones, new generations arising. And we know that there will be room because Beth Am has always known how to make the tent wider. As it is written in Isaiah, enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords, strengthen the stakes. Isaiah 54:2. This is what Beth Am has been doing for 50 years. Not just for my family, but for so many. This is the house of the people, a place that feels like home because it is.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Ani zealot, but it wasn't always like that. I'm so glad to be here, standing here today, and I wanted to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude and warmth for the kindness that the synagogue has shown me and my family. Before I first arrived, I took the scenic route to get to Beth Am. I was taking Hebrew lessons with somebody in Israel. I actually went to Israel for Yom Kippur. I took an intro to Judaism class in DC, and in that class, Johann Potts was the instructor. And I would drive past Beth Am every day, and Johann Potts ended up asking, "Where do you live?" I told her I live in Reservoir Hill. And she made the introduction where I had to cut the cord and actually step through the door. I was terrified. She said I should go to service, so what I did, I went to Locks and Learn. And now I know from being here that fear, there was no reason for that. Everyone here is so inclusive. When I went to Locks and Learn that day, I met Jim. He welcomed me in, Bonnie as well. And I've loved it ever since. I guess like anyone new to a community, you don't know what to expect, but from that very first moment, I was met with such openness and hospitality, it made me feel right at home. One thing that's really stood out to me is how inclusive and kind everyone has been. Not just to me, but to my entire family. From the rabbis to the volunteers, to all of you who have taken the time to have conversations, to try to introduce yourself and get to know us, we felt like we belonged since day one. And today, especially, I wanted to mention with the diversity event taking place at services today, it's a beautiful reflection of this synagogue's commitment to creating an environment where all are welcome. Today's event is a celebration of diversity, something that is so important, especially in this world where we seem to continuously live through unprecedented times. Here, diversity is not just a concept we talk about, but it's something we actively embrace and celebrate. I'm excited to be a part, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we all come together to honor and appreciate each other's unique backgrounds. I think what really stands out to me about this synagogue is the way it fosters a sense of belonging. It's one thing to say that you're inclusive, but this community shows it through actions. So I thought I should take some time to highlight some of the actions that have made me feel included. This isn't leaving anyone out, it's just the people who are here today. The Cat Calves, they invited me to my first kiddush, made me sit down and get something to eat for the first time because I was scared to sit down and get something to eat. And Jason, he invited me up to carry the Torah for the first time. The Weisses, they invited me to like my first sukkah hop. I built a sukkah, didn't invite anybody over, but you guys helped me feel more welcome during Sukkot, so I thank you for that. And I thank the Camp House for that. Jim has given me the talit that I have on right now. He makes sure I didn't sit in the back anymore. I sit in the middle. I don't sit in the front yet. He makes sure I don't sit in the back. Bonnie, she showed me the sanctuary for the first time. And because of that, I came to my first service, so thank you. Alex, he helped me get oriented into everything that's going on in Bethlehem. He signed me up for the email list, so I wouldn't even know about half the events if it wasn't for you. And I'm on the data science team now, so thank you. I really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to Max and Ami for making my son feel included, because that's a big part of being part of a synagogue. And I wanted to say thank you to the Bergs for inviting us to our first and second Pesach, so thank you. And I want to say thank you to Rav Tyler for inviting me to my first break fast after Yom Kippur, which is a special holiday to me since that was the first holiday I celebrated in Israel. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things you guys have done to make me feel included. I know it has been very moving to me. And oh, there's Barry. And Barry for helping me learn Hebrew and helping Sarah learn Hebrew and really making us feel welcome. And thanks everyone. And I'm sorry if I left anyone out, but I just wanted to highlight how you guys have made me feel included as somebody who is visually different than most Ashkenazi Jews. So thank you.
Stuart and I first laid eyes on each other here at Bethlehem just before Rosh Hashanah in 1981. We were married here in March of '83, and our first child, Benjamin, was born just before Pesach in '85. Unfortunately, he was deprived of oxygen during childbirth and was soon diagnosed with cerebral palsy, profound mental retardation, cortical blindness, and epilepsy. When he was too big for a stroller, he started using a wheelchair. By that time, our family had grown. Our second child, Rebecca, arrived almost 2 years after Benj, and joined by our third child, Elliot, almost 8 years later. Our entire family was frequently here for Shabbat services and other activities. And if you were coming to Bethlehem before the year 2000, you would remember that there was no elevator. So getting up to the sanctuary wasn't the easiest thing to do. How did we do that? Our routine was that we'd pull into the space in front of the steps on Utah Place. Stuart would take Benjamin's wheelchair up the steps, empty, while I stayed in the car with the other children. Stuart would come back to the car, carry Benj up the steps, strap him into his chair. I would follow with the other kids.
At some point, a generous donor arranged for a chairlift to be installed between the social hall and the sanctuary. It was in that area. It traveled up the back steps and was helpful to a number of people. Unfortunately, Benj was not one of them. We thought that an elevator would be helpful for not only ourselves, but anyone with any physical limitations.
In 1998, Benj turned 13. Although he couldn't have a traditional bar mitzvah, we thought it was important to mark this milestone in a meaningful way. We designed a service to celebrate his 13th birthday. We also wanted to find a way to help the shul improve accessibility for everyone.
We asked the Bethlehem board to establish an accessibility fund to accept donations, which would help make the building more accessible for everyone. Bethlehem first elevator was ready for use 3 years later, which is impressive considering that we raised all of that money for the elevator within 3 years. And so it was ready in time for Rosh Hashanah in 2001, almost 25 years ago. As a result, many people using wheelchairs and walkers were able to join us for services. And I remember one of the problems was the executive director was scared if we had to evacuate the building for fire or whatever, the aisles would be crowded with wheelchairs and walkers. A good problem to have. Before the recent renovations in 2019, the fund was also used to build a ramp up to the bima from the sanctuary. It was crude. It did not meet handicapped accessibility standards, but it was there. It helped out. So the state ramp provide better handrails in the stairways and improve the sound system, especially for those with hearing impairments. Unfortunately, Benj did not have a lot of time to use the elevator as he died in 2002 when he was 17. Our recent renovations of the synagogue, again in 2019, included a new, larger, better elevator, handicapped accessible bathrooms, and finally an ADA compliant ramp between the bima and the sanctuary. During COVID, of course, streaming services were added, which still allows homebound congregants to participate. Importantly, today the synagogue is fully accessible to everyone that I can think of with a disability. The Accessibility Fund is still active and it's still needed, and it has been used recently to fund sound system improvements, and it will also be needed for future repairs and technological improvements.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a proud parent of LGBTQIA young people, and I will speak honestly from the heart because we sincerely love this special congregational community. Thank you. It will probably be really schmaltzy, but I promise you it's very true. During the pandemic, my family decided to become more observant. We have a complicated Jewish history, and we went back to school. We didn't know what that would look like. We didn't know how it would work given the circumstances, but we did not expect what would come along. Rob Tyler ended up teaching one of our classes, and we immediately felt very much at ease, and that was the kind of energy that we wanted to have in our lives. So from our first interactions with Rob Daniel and Rob Tyler, it was apparent that their minds and their hearts were open. That was the beginning of our Beth Am journey. We quickly learned that this quality was very common of this congregation, and we had found an accepting and diverse shul. It wasn't too good to be true. It is the real deal. Beth Am is a place where families like ours can not only feel safe, or just tolerated, but to be celebrated. Like this right now. Our family here, our family could thrive. No one would be othered or made to feel less than anyone else. Here our family could be Jewish, and we get to be LGBTQIA harmoniously. An environment like this does not come into an existence in a vacuum. Good people make it happen. As parents and activists, we understand the level of hard work, learning, and listening that's required for the creation of such a space. Beth Am leadership and community members continually put in the work necessary, the effort to make it happen. I especially want to say Barry. He's done beautiful things with the events that are hosted. The congregation does host events geared toward LGBTQIA members, friends, family, and allies. They've been educational, bonding, and fun for us. We have never, ever encountered a single word, even resembling bigotry here. I can't even imagine that. To the contrary, we have only received consistent support and encouragement at every turn. Beth Am has provided a true home for us, a place that I can tell fellow Jews with queer kids that they can raise them in a shul that is safe, growth-oriented, and highly inclusive. We feel privileged to be a part of this. Not everyone who needs such a place has access to one. The world could use a lot more Beth Ams, maybe a Beth Am model. Our affinity for Beth Am has never lost its shine in the time that we've been here. Part of this vibrant community. The light only grows. It has been my honor to share some of my thoughts and feelings about this very, very special place. Thank you all for being welcoming and accepting people, and for allowing our family to share in it. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Before I start, I just want to thank the speakers who came before me. Those were really moving and really wonderful words, and it makes me feel so wonderful to be part of this community. My wife, Katie Klein, and I grew up in the conservative movement in the 1990s. Sexual and gender diversity certainly existed within the Jewish communities, but were rarely acknowledged in positive ways. We witnessed bullying of peers who were suspected of being gay or didn't conform to gender norms. Raising our non-binary kid, Max, at Beth Am has been a wonderful contrast. No one has blinked as Max's gender expression has increasingly differed from their gender assigned at birth. In fact, a Schul friend offered to take them dress shopping along with her own kid, and Carol Burkhauser cheerfully cast Max as an Esty in last year's Purim Spiel. Pride Shabbat and other Rainbow Circle programs let them know that their gender is not just tolerated, but celebrated. And Susanna Kolsted's request that they help decorate for Pride lets them know that they're valued as a contributing member of the community. They perceive no tension between being proudly Jewish and proudly and publicly non-binary. For the past few years, on the day of Baltimore's Pride Parade, we've gone to Shul in the morning and then joined other Beth Am families with queer and trans kids to walk over to the Charles Street and watch the parade. Once there, we've run into other congregants watching or marching. And a special shout out to Erin Kelly, who marched with the queer librarians. We are so grateful to have a community where the intersection of Shabbat, Pride, and Central Baltimore is a source of celebration, not tension. Shabbat Shalom, thank you very much.
What else can we say? Those stories were remarkable. Thank you to everyone who opened their hearts this morning and shared. I think two things that I heard in both stories are one, that we don't do this alone. This doesn't come top down from the rabbis or from the executive director or from the synagogue president. It takes every person making an effort to create the kind of community in which we seek. So today's really a day of celebration for all of us. And also to say that this work is really never finished. So while we've heard a lot of good things about the work that we've done over these last 50 years to be inclusive, we know that once we pat ourselves on the back and say, we're finished, we've kind of turned away from that mission. So I hope and pray on this day as we celebrate Amcha that we continue to find ways, as Dee told us, to widen the tent, to open our hearts, to be curious, and to continue this commitment which has powered this community for so many years. So thank you to Desiree and Philip, to Bonnie and Stuart and Nick and Jennifer and David,